this question stood out to me and something I thought you could think about as we're going through our conversation today. Think back on your own mental health history. Have you experienced divorce, the death of a loved one, a financial setback such as the loss of a job? Have you moved several times, experienced a physical disability? All of these stressors that can have a significant impact on mental health. I know that I definitely resonated with that because my life fell apart at one point in my life. And I wanted to talk to Sheila today because those stressors were like so overwhelming to me, and I didn't have the tools in my toolbox to help me get through a period other than just really honestly going to bed and being on Facebook.
Mm.
So here we are, and her insights are going to help all of us. So let me tell you about Sheila. Sheila is a 5-time Emmy award-winning journalist and the author of All Things We Never Knew, Chasing the Chaos of Mental Health. As the CEO of Beyond Well Media, Sheila's team provides mental health programming for over 1 million U.S. workers through a partnership with WebMD. Her podcast, Beyond Well with Sheila Hamilton, offers free health tools delivered by a team of psychiatrists, psychologists, and people with lived experiences. She is helping so many people living with mental health issues and their families. Sheila, I am so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you, Joni. That was a beautiful introduction. And I so appreciate being with your community of women, especially. I think that right now, community is more important than anything we can do for our mental health. So thank you for having me.
We're also isolated, so I appreciate that because community is very important.
Yeah.
Sheila, your book is profound, and at times, it's very hard to read. It's such a personal biography of your story, and I'm hoping that you can share, the struggle you had and the experience that led to this book.
Yeah, well, the reason that I've committed my life to sharing mental health tools and resilience tools is because I had to learn them, and pretty much the hard way. I met a man in Portland, Oregon that was just the most magnetic human being I had ever known in my life. I met him in a coffee shop, and I was on a break from work, and it was almost like somebody turned on the lights and I could see for the first time. He was just brilliant, spoke several languages, had an incredible grasp of history and politics, and we had a life together that was so wonderful. We're both huge outdoor people, and we both skied and hiked, and he actually raised chickens, and we hunted mushrooms. But he was a builder designer, and when his business started getting really busy, I noticed a big change in him. He for the first time was not sleeping. And I just chalked it up to as a stressful period in his life. Then his eating habits changed. He was an organic gardener. We used to cook together, and he started eating microwave pot pies. That was a big warning sign to me. Then he stopped doing all the activities we love: cycling, hiking, going out with friends and having a beer. He honestly cut off communication with the people closest to him. And it was about this time, Joni, that I asked him to see a mental health therapist. He was really stigmatized, both by his family history that didn't really believe in mental health, and also because he self-stigmatized. He was very ashamed. So he finally asked a doctor friend for help, was just something to let him sleep. And the doctor prescribed antidepressants, which were absolutely the worst thing for him. He began having suicidal thoughts. And unfortunately for us, he was put in psychiatric care, and that was a nightmarish experience. He was given no hope for recovery, 13 medications pumped into his body, none of which worked. And my husband disappeared the day after he was released from psychiatric care. It is very difficult, and I just want to give a little trigger warning for anyone who has had any suicide in their family, because this part is difficult to talk about. But the reason my life changed so precipitously is because 6 weeks after he went missing, I got a phone call that said they'd found my husband's body in the Columbia Gorge. And my daughter, who was 9 at the time, let out a scream when I told her about what had happened, because I knew I had to tell her the truth. That so pierced my psyche. I knew that I hadn't been paying proper attention, both to my life, both to the importance of mental health, to the decline in our marriage and our communication. It was almost like an alarm that went through me that I was like, I better wake up to this new world.
Mhm.
I had to raise my daughter on my own. I feared for losing my house because we were in financial ruin, it turned out. I didn't really have a family support system near me in Portland, Oregon. And so I had to learn very quickly how I was going to actually be a role model for my daughter. And thank goodness, Joni, I'm a reporter. And so I started studying some of these resilience tools and started writing about our journey as an attempt to try to find solid ground. And that's where we are today. I have just become so passionate about this area of
Mhm.
mental health and resilience. And I hope that the people online are going to share in my enthusiasm for it, because I think it really does make our lives better.
Well, I just want to say that your work is helping, again, so many people. And I'm so happy that we're going to be able to share some of the tools that you have found over the years to help you go through this process of resilience and deeply caring for self. But I do want to just talk about, you had such, like the extreme case
Yeah,
of putting yourself in, or something happening to you that took you out, right?
yeah,
And it was really over a long period of time, and then ultimately the suicide. But mental health is an everyday thing for so many people, and it could be something, as I mentioned earlier, such as losing your job,
yep,
losing a loved one. For me during that time, my mom had dementia,
yeah,
ultimately for 10 years. I had a man in my life that it fell apart. It was an ugly, breakup. I mean, among many other things that all happened at once. But it doesn't have to be, all of those things. It could be something that just in the morning you wake up, it's like, God, I can't do today. So
that's right.
let's talk about and I want to say that there's so much going on in the world right now with politics and
Mhm.
social media and the climate. Like you said, it's like global warming
Yeah.
is happening behind us. So let's do a check-in with everyone on our with us today. It's like, how are you doing? Sheila, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, I one of the things that I didn't realize before this time, Joni, was that we're all on a spectrum of mental health, just like we're on a spectrum of physical health. And if we're not going to the gym, if we're not drinking water, if we're not, eating
Mhm.
well, our physical health declines. It's very
Right.
similar with our mental health. If we're not actually putting deposits back in our sort of resilience bank, we can have things like job loss, economic insecurity, a change in the political landscape as we're seeing now, a loss of a friend, a loss of a friendship. And all these things make us feel less stable. So
Mhm.
I always think about my spectrum of mental health in the morning and kind of go, where am I today? And how many tools do I need to employ today? I'm very conscious of it. And I'd love to hear from other people
Mhm.
about what some of the stressors are for them today, because one of the things that I always think about is the nexus of control. When we have these external events that are happening, the only thing that we can really do to ground ourselves every single day is ask what among these things is within our control.
Yes,
And if
absolutely.
something is within our control, how do we actually form a relationship to getting that thing done? And if it's not, how do I actually discipline myself to let it go? Because the
Mhm.
amount of time that we spend on issues that we cannot control is really quite outrageous. And I'm as guilty as anyone, but I do catch myself doing it now and try that. So, is
Yeah.
anybody else like destabilized by what's happening
Yeah,
Well,
so
somebody
one of
mentioned the
the
sweltering heat. I
yes, I'm
completely agree with that. The heat destabilizes us.
well, we would love for you to share in the chat. And, Brene, I've been listening to a lot to Brene Brown recently on her podcast, and she calls it untethered.
Uh-huh.
And with so much going on in the world, the wars and, just the political climate these days, like there's just so much. And I know sometimes I wake up to the news and I'm like, oh, what is going to happen? Like, yeah, there's just so much. And um, so, how do you deal on a day-to-day basis, Sheila, with these things that are untethering when we are faced with it, nearly moment to moment sometimes?
I have, as a reporter, given up television news for one, because the way the television news wants to actually get us involved is by a 24/7 attachment to this. They want to raise our anxiety levels so that their ratings are much better. And what I realize is that's just not good for my personal nervous system. I
Mhm.
I wake up, I do my bit of mindfulness, I do all of the exercises we're going to be talking about. And then when I feel grounded, I limit myself to my news consumption. It's usually through reading, and I do a lot of deep reading on the news, but I I can no longer take that kind of incessant barking at me. It's just not good for my nervous system anymore. And I'm a former news reporter, so there you have it.
Yeah, that's funny you should say that because when I got out of news, I didn't watch the news for years
Yeah,
and years and years, and I
yeah,
shouldn't be doing it now anymore.
yeah.
So a couple of comments here, Sheila, in the chat. My husband is in tech and has been unemployed for
Mm,
2 years. I've been supporting us with my consulting business, and there's been a huge inflow of consultants.
yeah,
Also, there's the hesitancy for buying, giving economic and political, anyway, untethered
yeah,
is the perfect word. We are struggling to make life decisions in this world,
yeah.
in this swirl.
I do want to just talk about our nervous systems just a little bit. When everything feels like it's the external threat is coming at us, one of the things that I have really started concentrating on is how I'm grounding in my body every day. I
Mhm,
wake up in the morning and do sort of an inventory of how am I in terms of my water consumption? How am I in terms of what I plan to eat for the day? How am I going to make the connections with other human beings? I really think that we need to just acknowledge that the external threat is way higher than any of us should be used to,
mhm.
and that the more we can ground ourselves in the feeling and sensations of our body, the calmer we can become. So I'd like to talk about a few of those tips as well, because I think it's so important that we actually realize all of this stuff on social media, on the news, conversations with friends, that is external impetus. Where we ground ourselves is in our internal, in actually
Exactly.
acknowledging our thoughts and actually looking at our behaviors and feeling the stress in our bodies and actually finalizing the stress cycle. So that's how I'm
So,
coping with
yeah,
it.
so Sheila, you've learned a lot about resiliency over the years, and you have some thoughts on, what are those common things that people who are resilient have in common? Let's talk about that right now.
Well, this was throughout my research. It came up time and time again, whether it was I'm interviewing the Navy SEALs or Harvard's psychologists in their resiliency division. There are three things that came up time and time again, Joni, and they are that we have an unwavering belief that life is meaningful. And that what that meant
So
to me was
important.
so important, because when I was at the peak of this grief, the financial worry, the feeling that I wasn't going to be able to actually keep my job because the pressure was so high, I still believed life was meaningful. And that's what we find, is that people who are going through the hardest things, whether it's from people who've been in concentration camps or people who've endured extreme abuse and war, they have a belief that despite their struggle, life is
Mhm.
meaningful. The second thing is they accept reality as it is. So we can be hoping that the climate isn't changing. We can be hoping that politics were more settled. It is not. we accept reality as it is. And then the third, we get extremely creative about how we're going to deal with it. I love this, that resilient people often have the most creative impulses around how they are going to cope. So, like this group, we are getting together, we are talking about solutions. We are actually seeking the comfort of other people. We are creative. We are not going to bed to actually deal with the stress. And those are the three tenets that I continue to live by, because just as some of your members are saying, you know, struggling is part of being human. It's kind of
Yes.
the exchange we make for being human. And if we can understand that the struggle is part of our human experience, then we can react to it just a little bit more like mindfully. And
Mhm.
I often think about resilience sort of as a net. And when something happens, your mom gets sick, it's cut away a little bit. And then you lose your job, it's cut away a little bit more. And then there can be a time where something else happens in your relationship and you feel as if the net is leaving you entirely. But the tips that I want to share actually feed back, they build back that net every single day. Using
Yeah.
these micro tools kind of can help you to form a more solid base for yourself.
Well, let's talk about those micro tools. There's 6, and I just want the audience to know that we'll be sending these out to you afterwards. So you listen in and take it in, and then you'll be reading more once we send that out later today with the video. So let's go ahead and talk about the first micro tool. We really wanted this to be more of a workshop today, so you can put those in your toolkit with you from this point forward. So noticing the stories we are telling ourselves. So let's talk about that one.
So Joni, I structured these tips because in my workshops and in the work that I do, especially with corporations, I give probably 25 different things throughout the course of several days. But I wanted especially women to think about how our day flows and just do these 6. So we wake up and you'll immediately notice you're telling yourself stories, right? The thoughts we have in our head are not really helpful for forming our worldview most
No.
times, because we wake up with, oh my God, it's going to be 102 and this planet, and what are we leaving to our kids,
Yeah.
and what is happening with the election. And this is really based in our kind of primordial sense that we need to always be watching for the tiger who's coming into the cave.
Mhm.
But if you're aware of that, then you can actually move that thought along, kind of let it go by the wayside, and come to something that deals with either gratitude, or perhaps it's splendor, or perhaps it's something that you're looking forward to.
Yeah.
And this is not toxic positivity, Joni. This is actually instructing our neurochemical messengers to go do a job that's
Yes.
going to help us throughout the day. And so I always go with, God, I'm so grateful to be alive. I still at this age have a body that works. I am so grateful. And boy, immediately, I have instructed my neurons to do a dance of positivity and hope and connectivity. And that
Mhm.
is the way that I try to start the day.
Well, I appreciate that so much. A couple of things, I try to start the day almost every day in nature. Even,
Yeah.
here in the city, we have a wonderful lake. I talk about it all the time. It's called Green Lake. I've been walking around that lake during each and every season, every day, just starting the day out by looking at nature and experiencing that. I never wear earphones because I want to know
Yeah.
what the science, the sounds are, what the sights are, the new birds that come in, the new flowers that are popping up, the
Yeah.
color of the green in the trees. And it's such a lovely way to start the day, and kind of takes me out of myself, and also gives me that walking
Yeah.
meditation, which I have found to be um, one of the most important things I do every day.
Yeah.
Um, I want to just acknowledge someone in the chat, and she goes, I have not found life to be meaningful beyond caring for my animals.
Mm.
And so, Sheila,
I am more emotional about this today because I am back in the city where my husband took his life. And when I hear that someone says, I have not felt that life is meaningful, I need you, first of all, to just think about all of these women in this moment, connected by this incredible technology, loving you,
Mhm.
putting out our hopes and our thoughts and our wishes that you knew the value in you that we know you have as a human being. I mean,
Mhm.
I honestly struggled with this myself after my husband died because I thought, what did I do to make him do this? And one of the thoughts that was so helpful for me is there is a wonder in the fact that we are sharing this moment on this planet,
Mhm.
connected by something that is so magical beyond our wildest imaginations. If only that we are under the same stars at night, this is reason for us to believe we are important.
Yes.
And I personally want to tell you that I have been there for people who have struggled like this by text, by email, by messaging. I can send you books that helped me get through this period. I really am so glad that you said this today because I think a lot of people feel this and they feel shame in saying it. And I want to be a person who could be helpful to you. So, Joni, I hope you'll give her
I
my
will.
personal
Yes, I will.
information. And
Thank you.
thank you for saying so.
Yes. And I also want to note that she has pets in her life, and I know you do too, and I have too, and you have too, and that we have to keep them alive. And that's
Yeah.
really important that they bring so much joy and love and unfiltered excitement into our lives. And
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing. And
Yeah.
we really appreciate that. So the next one is mindfulness breaks.
Yeah, so this is like kind of mid-morning is when we start to see the building up of tension. You feel it in your jaw, you feel it in your shoulders hunching near your ears. You're trying to do a million things with the kids or grandkids. And this is the time when I really use the tools for mini mindfulness breaks. If you're in traffic, I use a tool called Stop, which is instead of perseverating, ruminating on what is going wrong, I stop, take a look around,
Mhm.
observe your surroundings, and then proceed. And what this does, Joni, is that it allows us to actually get out of our heads where anxiety is all future based. What is going to happen? How am I going to
Mhm.
respond? How am I going to do this? And it brings us back into the simple moment of where we are. Because these mindfulness breaks are really only just about paying attention in the given moment. But what it does for our nervous system is it signals us like, oh, we're now calm. Oh, it's going to be okay. Because oftentimes in the given moment, we are okay. So if you can just do these mindfulness, what is happening right now? I'm paying attention to Joni's beautiful face and her gorgeous flowers behind her. The hydrangeas are in bloom. We're all
Mhm.
here together. Like actually really grounding yourself in the moment is incredibly important for us.
And I want to just add to that because I also use stop. And if I have a thought that I don't think is serving me, I just say stop. And it's amazing.
That's so
I
good.
mean, I mean, just
Yeah.
talking to my brain about, because sometimes your brain just goes here and there, and sometimes it's unwanted and unfiltered, like thoughts that you have. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just go stop, and it's so good. I'm like, no, I don't want that right now. Stop.
That's right. Yeah.
Because the brain, there's a reason they call it the monkey brain.
That's
And
right.
so
Yeah. I just wanted to teach, a lot of times on Zoom meetings or the things that are hunching us over computers make us feel stressful. And I use a thing called box breathing. I'm sure a lot of you hear about it, but the reason it's so helpful for me is it's actually the size of a computer screen. So on the top
Mm,
of your screen, you do a kind of 4 count in with a breath. And then on the side, you hold that breath for 4 counts. Then you release it for 4 counts on the bottom of your screen. And then you reassess. How am I doing? What else do I need right now to be able to calm my nervous system and feel just a little bit more grounded today? If not, do it again. That box breathing is really a simple way to follow
it
your
is.
breath. And I
And
remember the
gets you grounds you back
totally,
into
it
who you
does
are.
ground you back.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people when they say breathe, when you're really under stress, like some of the people that are dealing with incredibly like traumatic events right now, it's hard to breathe. So
Mhm.
putting it in that box breathing really helps you regulate.
And to do it multiple times really helps. It's very much a yogic invitation to
Yeah.
slow down and give yourself the gift of breath.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about somatic training.
Yeah. Somatic training is really coming along, especially in terms of the evidence-based science that shows for people who have a difficult time expressing their emotions, grounding yourself in your body through movement actually can release some of that. And it's really helpful in terms of taking the stress cycle and kind of offloading the neurochemicals that are terrible for us, like adrenaline and cortisol. And so things like running water over your hands and noticing the sensation of the warmth or the cold on it, um, kind of slapping your chest open and breathing out at the same time. Dancing any way, anytime you can put on movement and dance in a way that feels logical and familiar and not embarrassing to you is so helpful. Somatic training has been so incredible in the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, who deals with the most traumatized children, children who were raised in cages, who were victims of war from the time they were infants. And what he found is that things like rocking, yoga, dancing, movement brings people out of trauma way faster than talk therapy. So sometimes it's really important just to feel where you're holding in your body and move that way. I used to work at a news station and I would have 60 seconds in between breaks and I would just go, blah. I didn't know what I was doing, but
Mhm.
I was somatic
You
training
were,
my
yes.
body.
You know,
Yeah,
sometimes people say to shake, like just get up and like
that's
shake it
right.
out and shake it out.
That's
It
right.
feels so good if you do it. I
Yeah,
did it for 20 minutes
yeah,
with through this training. It was unbelievable, but it doesn't take 20 minutes. That was just an
yeah,
example. You can do it for a minute and you just feel incredibly different, like
you
just
do.
making your body feel alive and it puts you in a different place.
Yeah.
So let's talk about connecting deeply.
Well, I always think about if you haven't connected deeply by the time lunchtime rolls around, it's time. It's time to either meet with someone that you dearly love or connect in a meaningful way. I have friends who are such good letter writers, and they use this kind of connecting time to really pour their emotions out about a person that they love. I love going on hikes with my girlfriends. It's a time where we're shoulder to shoulder. We're doing that kind of linear thinking and we're in nature. And that is the kind of connecting that we really
Yeah.
need as mammals. I
Mhm.
think in this digital world, loneliness is so unbelievably difficult because we think we're connecting, but the truth is, unless we have human touch, unless we hear our voices, unless
Mhm.
we have that smile that says, oh my gosh, we really are connected, it's very difficult to
Yeah.
actually get the feeling in our bodies that we're safe. And I always remind myself, we as mammals need our pack. We need people.
Absolutely.
We need individuals that can listen to us and not judge us. And so by noontime, I try to make at least one connection, a meaningful connection that feels really good that way.
That was one of my goals for this year, and Richard said that that was one of his as well, is to
Yeah.
be more deeply in touch with people. And,
Yeah.
Facebook, you just observe, it isn't a connection, just to reiterate that, and Instagram and TikTok and all of those, it's more entertainment than it is anything else, if
Yeah.
that. But the invitation is just, to reach out to somebody you haven't talked to for a long time. Pick up the phone. I mean, I
Yeah.
even tell my team to do that on a day-to-day basis. Like,
Yeah.
even like at work when we're, on our computers all day. And I'm like, you guys just pick up the phone and connect with somebody in that way. But,
Yeah.
with our friends and family who have, are sometimes spread out all over the US or all over the globe, just do something to connect with the heart, like that
Yeah.
heartfelt piece is
A-
so important.
Joni, a lot of executives really they start thinking about the time I'm asking them to take, but boy, there is so much good evidence around if you take these breaks, if you
Yes.
allow, if you push away from the computer, put it, put the laptop down and go make a meaningful connection with someone, the length of time you can be productive actually increases. And
I
so it's
absolutely
it's
agree.
it's counter of what a lot of people think when I say, please, can you put these into your day? But it might be 10 minutes of your day to give you 2 more hours where you feel good and are energized. So if anybody's starting to think I'm actually adding up the time she's asking me to be mindful and resilient and it's too much time, it is not. It is not.
I love that. Okay, perspective taking is vital to resilience.
Yeah, perspective taking was so important for me because in the beginning, I was telling myself, I'm a failure. I contributed to this. I did this. And a therapist said to me, what if this works out better than you can imagine? And I honestly was a little offended by that. But what she meant was, what if you can take this difficult experience, this horrible trauma, and turn it into something that makes you a better human being? What if you can develop more spirituality? What if you can be more compassionate? What if you can hear people in a way that you might not have heard them previously? And that statement that I was really offended by turned out to be so true. So why I think perspective taking is so important when we're under stress is we've got to try to get to that growth mindset where we can say, okay, what can I learn from this? How can this
Yes.
actually help me for the rest of the years that I'm here on this planet?
Mhm.
And how can it help me be a more compassionate human being to others?
Yes. And I just want to add something that Celine says here is there, she wrote some beautiful words here, and I'm so sorry your husband passed, Celine.
Mm.
But I did just want to say that you ended your note here is there's only one thing you can control in life, and that is how you choose to react to what happens to you.
Yeah,
And she goes, again, a choice, and I am trying to follow their path.
yeah,
So thank you for sharing.
yeah.
Beauty hunting.
Well, this is probably one of my favorites. I mean, it's really easy to stop paying attention or think we're paying attention because we've already looked through TikTok and Instagram. But beauty hunting is that search for that which delights us. It is planning on putting our attention on the unexpected, the thing that you've passed 1,000 times and you didn't recognize how
Mhm.
beautiful it was. I was just doing a walk through the neighborhoods here, and Portland, Oregon has these beautiful little lending libraries. And I just stopped and really noticed it. Like, this is so intentional that someone built this beautiful little box that they're giving and cleaning and dusting and taking that time from our day allows us to have the kind of splendor that we can often forget when we're just so task oriented. My favorite poet, Mary Oliver, says,
Oh,
attention is the beginning of devotion. And I love that because
no, it's
in this
beautiful.
age of distraction and so much coming at us 24/7, what we can't see is going to go unloved. And so if we pay attention, we can begin loving again. And loving is sort of the stepstone to feeling resilient. And so I don't know, if you choose one today, one thing that you're doing, put beauty hunting at that list. I think it's a fantastic way to end the day.
Just putting your attention, like you said, on something outside of yourself. I mean, I was in the garden the other day and digging up a new area that I've not worked on in the past, and I was just noticing
Yeah.
there's so much life and
Mhm.
the bees coming by, and I mean it was just like you said, splendor, and
Yeah.
I was reveling in the magic of the universe and how everything is connected and how we all work together. And that came to me in the garden the other day, and it was just such a beautiful moment. So thank you for letting me share that.
Joni, I was preparing for this with a friend, and I said, so these are sort of the tools I want to talk about. And she said, it sounds to me like you're saying be more like your dog. And I said, well, absolutely. We can actually just distill that. Think about how they pay attention. Think about
Mhm.
how completely devoted they are to the moment. Think about how when they go out into the world, almost as if they're seeing it for the first time. I mean, there is a beauty and kind of knowingness in the way that
Yes.
they're mammals. And we at our nature are like that. So if I'm in a real rut, I'm like, come on, dogs. And I try to just follow their lead, you know?
I love that for the holidays last year, Sheila, I wrote a love letter from the dogs and how to deal with the holidays from a dog's perspective. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
It was from Jasper and Juno, by the way.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful. That's really
I
wonderful.
I've always had dogs in the office, and I've thought that, I've had my company, my PR firm for over 30 years now. So from day one, we've had dogs in the office, and it has been such an incredible reminder about the importance of getting out of our heads and into the
Yeah,
moment
that's
from the
right.
dog's perspective. And
Yeah.
so I just want to honor all of the dogs in my life, who have been through the doors of our company. So um, Richard says, first micro tool, wake up, telling stories in head, shift to gratitude.
Yeah.
Those gratitude lists are so
Oh,
vitally important and such a beautiful reminder that you can see these small things in the midst of perhaps a chaotic day that you're having, that
right.
it doesn't have to be big things at all, but it can be the beauty of my flowers that I picked this morning
Yeah.
for today. So it's like there's magic right there.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that I just want to add is that walking in nature in silence is
Um,
also a beautiful gift to give yourself that can kind of ground you in a way that just again to use all of your senses as a really piece of a magical gift that I want to give you today. So
yeah.
if you can even go to a city park and do that, that's a beautiful way to get back to just kind of walking on this planet that we're walking on every day.
Joni, I had a really profound sort of awakening around the clarity and beauty of the forest when my husband died, because we had had this horrible, horrible winter storm, and all the trees outside where I was writing my book were just completely battered and broken. And I was reading so deeply on grief and how we recover. And I don't know how I came across this book about the intelligence of forests, how they ground their roots down deep and they are actually feeding nutrients to the weakest of our
Yes.
crowd. And I'm so hoping that I can be the tree today that's feeding some nutrients down to other people who are struggling, because I'm not kidding you. That spring, when I had finished and I had done this deep internal work, that tree was blooming again and it had these beautiful sprouts. And it was almost as if it was saying, I am stronger today for having gone what I went through. And
Mhm.
I revere our forests because of this. I revere their intelligence and what we can learn from actually paying attention to how our forest communicates. So I hope
It-
there is something that
yes.
I've shared today that people can say, yeah, like, yeah, now we're all in the trees together.
And I do just want to mention that we on Revel 11 did interview Suzanne Samard about her book about how trees communicate, and
Oh,
it is on revel11.com under past events.
yeah.
So, Sheila, this has just been such an incredible conversation today, and the
Mhm.
tools that you have given us I will walk lighter on this planet knowing some of them. I highly recommend you listen to Sheila's podcast. Her book is a fabulous,
Thank you.
it's so well written. I would say it's a hard read because you really, told the full story of, what it was like to be with someone with mental illness. And it so resonated with me because I have a friend going through this with her husband, and I saw you in her and her husband and your husband. And it was like, wow, like we're not alone in this story.
Yeah, I always feel like, Joni, when one person in the family gets sick, it impacts the entire family unit. So if you're
Mhm.
struggling, I will just name just a few resources. NAMI in your community has an incredible support system. If you have a family member, they have free trainings, they have free support. There are also so many now online groups that can help people who have family members who are struggling. And I know a lot of us who have kids in that age group, 14 to 25, is struggling more than ever before, according to the CDC. So there's also just so much more out there now for family members than there was when I actually wrote the book. But I'm happy to share those resources as well.
That would be lovely. And will you tell them about your next book that you're working on?
Yeah, I have just been in conversation with women who are what I call climbing the second mountain, which is our, midlife and beyond, and really trying to challenge the narrative that's there that asks us to disappear, that asks us to pretend as if we're no longer as important in this world because it's all geared to 13-year-old TikTokers.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I really believe we need to be fierce advocates for ourselves and um, revel in our wisdom and
Mhm.
revel in what we've learned and can share with one another. So the book is about these resilience tips that women over 50 are using.
And when will that be out, Sheila?
I'm hoping that it's going to be September of 2015.
2025,
Yeah.
actually.
2025.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you, Sheila, so much for everything today. And we will look to connect some of the audience with you. Thank you, audience, for being with us and for sharing your personal stories. It's greatly appreciated. To all of you, I hope you have a great rest of the day.